On this Wednesday night, Canadians injured by vaccines. Why some of them say the government broke its promise to help them.
I do not want to be the poster child for the anti-vax movement.
A Global News investigation into a $50 million federal program. It's not easy being green. Why automakers say Canada needs to hit the brakes on electric vehicle targets. The mixed verdict at the trial of Sean Diddy Combs. How long he could be in prison. Plus, what happened to Amelia Hehart 88 years ago? The evidence spurring a new odyssey to solve one of the world's biggest aviation mysteries.
I think we just might do it.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. We begin tonight with troubling revelations about a government program meant to protect the unfortunate few legitimately injured by vaccines. The Vaccine Injury Support Program was created during the pandemic to compensate people who suffered serious and permanent side effects. But a Global News investigation reveals 4 years later, only a fraction of the millions in taxpayer dollars funding that program is reaching those in need. Here's Carolyn Jarvis with part one of a three-part series.
I have not gone public ever, and not very many people even know the cause of Stephen's death, because I do not want to be the poster child for the anti-vax movement.
Stephen McDougall was 45, a father of two with an entire life ahead when he died.
Myopericarditis post-COVID vaccine.
His widow, Kimberly, was told a new federal program would help people financially if they were seriously and permanently injured. The Vaccine Injury Support Program, or VISP.
It's like a lottery, right? You never think it's going to be you.
The government hired an accounting and consulting firm, Raymond Chabot Grant Thornton, now called Oxaro, and paid them tens of millions of dollars to run VISP. But Global News spoke with vaccine-injured people and former workers across the country who say that program is chaos. Unskilled staff running a system unequipped to handle thousands of claims, leaving the injured waiting months, sometimes years, for help.
It got to a point where everything was a battle.
After 11 months, VISP approved Kimberly's claim and paid a death benefit worth roughly 3 years of Stephen's former salary, the maximum amount allowed by the Public Health Agency of Canada. And while VISP claims it will continue to support you for as long as needed, for Kimberly and her children, that meant only offering to pay for enough therapy to cover weekly sessions for a little over 3 months.
And then my kids are supposed to be fine. I'm supposed to be fine.
When COVID hit, Canada was the only G7 country without a vaccine injury support program.
We kept telling people, you don't want to stand these things up right in the middle of an emergency.
But during a pandemic,
we're creating a federal support program.
That's exactly what happened.
What we saw from global experiences, things don't go great.
And they didn't.
Thank you for contacting the Vaccine Injury Support Program.
Shannon DuPont's claim was approved.
To speak to a dedicated case manager.
And yet 4 years later, she's still battling VISP. With each of her 3 COVID shots, Shannon's health got worse. Vision loss, an autoimmune disorder, Bell's palsy.
My face literally looked like it was melting off on one side.
Unable to work, VISP said it would pay for her lost income and some of her injuries.
I'm on case manager number 9.
But error after error, she says.
They seem to lose everything and then you start all over from scratch.
Has left her $180,000 short.
I definitely cashed out every investment I had. I actually remortgaged my house.
Since 2021, the federal government has paid Oxaro $50.6 million to run VISP. Only a third of that, $16.9 million, has reached the injured.
So where's the money going?
In an email, Oxaro said it aims to provide a process that ensures all cases are treated fairly and with the same care, respect, and due diligence. It says its invoices reflect actual costs, reviewed and approved by the Public Health Agency of Canada. As for its timelines, it says that depends on each claim's nature and complexity. Stephen McDougall's widow says he would have still believed in science, although she no longer believes the government is there to help.
They promised to take care of us. They didn't fulfill their promise.
The Public Health Agency of Canada declined an interview, but says it's reviewing the program and concerns raised. Meanwhile, the Federal Health Minister, Marjorie Michel, reached out to us, saying the allegations we've uncovered are completely unacceptable, that she's asked the Public Health Agency of Canada to find a solution and that all options are on the table. Donna?
Okay, Carolyn Jarvis in Toronto, thank you. Tomorrow we go inside the offices for the Vaccine Injury Support Program, where former workers say they drank on the job, watched Netflix and played ping pong. There is growing pressure on the federal government to rethink its zero-emissions vehicle mandate. It sets targets for sales of electric vehicles and is intended to push consumers to ditch their gas-powered vehicles. But as government incentives disappear, sales of EVs have tapered off. And today, the CEOs of Ford, Stellantis and General Motors met with the Prime Minister. David Akin explains what they're worried about. David.
Well, Donna, Canada's automakers have a lot on their plate these days. And of course, it's not just the U.S. president's tariffs. It's also Ottawa's insistence that all new cars and light trucks sold in Canada have to be emission-free within the decade.
The federal electric vehicle, or EV mandate, sets sales targets for zero-emission vehicles that apply to all automakers and importers. The overall goal is that 100% of new cars and light trucks sold in 2035 will be zero-emission vehicles. Now, to get there, Ottawa has prescribed some interim targets. By 2030, for example, that number has to hit 60%. But CEOs of 3 automakers that met with Prime Minister Mark Carney Wednesday told him that meeting those targets and the fines they'll pay for failing to hit those targets will kill the Canadian auto industry.
The EV mandate itself is not sustainable. The targets that have been established cannot be met.
As for the Carney government, neither the PM nor his ministers were taking questions on the topic Wednesday, but the government wants to press ahead nonetheless with EV adoption and is looking at some options, including continuing with a consumer rebate program. That rebate program is officially paused right now. And without those rebates, sales of EVs, which are more expensive than gas-powered cars, are slowing. The latest StatsCan data from March showed that EV car sales dropped 44% compared to the same month a year ago, although sales of EV pickup trucks continued to grow.
Overall sales of EV trucks and cars now make up just 6.5% of all new vehicle sales. The EV mandate target for next year is more than double that, 20%. Donna.
Okay, David Akin in Ottawa, thank you. Sales of Tesla electric cars are falling sharply. The company sold just over 384,000 cars in the last 3 months. That's down more than 13% from the same period last year. The political activities and attitudes of CEO Elon Musk are believed to be keeping buyers away at the same time as competition has increased. Heat warnings and watches are in effect across much of Canada, and it's not helping the wildfire situation. The Canadian Interagency Forest Fire Centre says there are 480 active fires across the country now, 80 of them in British Columbia. One has burned 25 hectares and is raging out of control near the village of Lytton. It's about 260 kilometres from Vancouver. That's the community that was destroyed by a wildfire 4 years ago. Today, the federal government announced some help for people affected by this year's wildfires, including free replacements of personal documents such as passports. Intense heat is also gripping Europe, where wildfires have killed at least 2 people in Spain. It's believed farmers got trapped by fast-moving flames. Searing temperatures have also led to the deaths of 4 people in Italy and France. Both Spain and England had their hottest June since records began, and France had its second hottest June. The American president is again claiming Israel is ready to agree to a peace deal with Hamas, ending the cycle of war in Gaza and freeing the remaining hostages. Exactly what Israel has agreed to is not clear. Hamas said today it is studying the plan, but Israel's prime minister continues to say his goal is to banish Hamas from Gaza permanently. Redmond Shannon looks at where things stand and a warning his report does contain upsetting images.
Benjamin Netanyahu visiting an oil pipeline a 10-minute drive from the Gaza border. The Israeli Prime Minister with a message for Hamas as the group reads over a ceasefire proposal the US says Netanyahu has signed off on, promising he will eliminate Hamas completely. On the other side of the fence, Israeli drones and planes plow on with their campaign to do just that. More civilians, including children, injured and killed. This footage from the Al Nasser hospital in Khan Yunis. This Gaza resident says he wants to see all hostages and prisoners released, and that just like Hamas, he wants a permanent ceasefire. But that is not what is on offer. Instead, a 2-month pause that would reportedly see 10 of the estimated 20 living Israeli hostages set free.
Some suggestion that during the course of the ceasefire there will be further negotiations. Well, that's what phase 2 in the last ceasefire was all about.
That fell apart in March, and the core issue remains. Netanyahu says he wants Hamas destroyed and all hostages released before a final end to the war.
The two sides are quite apart.
Far-right Israeli ministers Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich say they'll pull support for Netanyahu's coalition if there's a ceasefire. But the Israeli opposition has said it could step in to keep Netanyahu in power in order to free hostages. Perhaps most importantly, the man with most leverage on Netanyahu, Donald Trump, certainly wants a deal before the US president welcomes him to the White House Monday. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
International nuclear inspectors have been shut out of Iran. Iran's president has enacted a law suspending cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency. Iran accuses the nuclear watchdog of aligning itself with Western countries and providing a pathway for strikes on its nuclear facilities. There are fears Iran could now pursue nuclear weapons development without any oversight. Music mogul Shawn Combs has been convicted of transporting prostitutes to take part in his drug-fueled sex marathons, and he remains in jail until he's sentenced. But he is celebrating being found not guilty of the most serious charges he was facing. Combs was accused of using his wealth and power to run a criminal network that sexually abused and exploited women. Heather Yourex-West explains the verdict and what it means.
After a nearly 8-week-long federal trial, Sean P. Diddy Combs dropped to his knees in a New York courtroom Wednesday and prayed before telling his friends and family, "I'm coming home." Outside, supporters called for the former rapper's release after news broke that the 55-year-old had escaped conviction on the most serious charges leveled against him. After 3 days of deliberation, the jury found Combs not guilty of 1 count of racketeering conspiracy and 2 counts of sex trafficking, but guilty of the 2 lesser charges of transportation to engage in prostitution.
Anything you want the public to know?
Not yet. We'll be saying something soon.
While Combs' lawyer, family and friends had little to say to media after the verdict, the lawyer representing Cassie Ventura, Combs' former girlfriend, said his client was in a good place with the news.
Of course, we would have liked to have seen a conviction on the sex crimes in RICO, but we understand beyond a reasonable doubt is a high standard, and we're just pleased that he still faces substantial jail time.
Balfour Durr is a former Canadian Crown prosecutor with no direct involvement in the case. He says a not guilty verdict to the conspiracy racketeering charge is not surprising.
Conspiracy is difficult to both prosecute and to prove. Whereas if, for instance, you have video evidence of Shawn Combs beating and kicking his girlfriend, if you charge him with assault, that's all there is to prove.
Had Combs been convicted of the 3 more serious charges, he would face a possible life sentence. He now faces a maximum of 20 years. Heather Yourex-West, Global News, Calgary.
The U.S. president versus the media. Coming up, the millions Trump is getting from one lawsuit and how he's gearing up to launch another. This video from Northern California shows the moment a fireworks warehouse exploded. The blast sent a fireball into the air that could be seen kilometers away. An evacuation order was issued for the immediate area. There's no word on injuries or what sparked the fire. The U.S. media company Paramount Global has agreed to pay $16 million to settle a legal dispute with the U.S. president. Donald Trump alleged the network had deceptively edited an interview with former Vice President Kamala Harris during the 2024 presidential election campaign. As Candace Cole explains, critics of the settlement call it a spineless capitulation that erodes press freedoms.
CBS's parent company, Paramount Global, will shell out $16 million to President Trump to settle a lawsuit waged over a 60 Minutes interview with then Vice President Kamala Harris that aired weeks before the presidential election. Trump claims it gave Harris an unfair advantage.
Kamala was unable to answer a question properly, and they took the question that they asked and they inserted an answer.
In his lawsuit, Trump accused the network of misleading voters with, quote, deceitful editing of Harris's answer to a question on whether the U.S. has any sway over Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
But it seems that,
as reflected by the raw interview posted by 60 Minutes,
we'll build.
The program Face the Nation used a longer portion at the beginning of Harris's response, while 60 Minutes used a shorter portion.
We're not going to stop.
That came at the end of that same response to accommodate time restraints. CBS said Trump's claims were false and the interview was not doctored. Paramount's settlement does not include an apology or any regret, and the settlement money will go toward Trump's future presidential library, not the president himself. In another legal battle brewing against another network, the Trump administration is looking to prosecute CNN over its reporting of the Ice Block app, designed to alert people when immigration and customs enforcement agents are within 5 miles.
We're working with the Department of Justice to see if we can prosecute them for that.
They may be prosecuted also for having given false reports on the attack in Iran.
Trump and Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem made those comments during their tour of Florida's so-called Alligator Alcatraz Migrant Detention Center Tuesday. Candace Cole, Global News, Washington.
A major American food processing company is filing for bankruptcy. Canned goods from Delonte Foods have been a staple at grocery stores for more than 130 years. Financial analysts say consumers cutting back on spending and a shift away from canned foods is partly to blame. Microsoft is firing about 9,000 employees. It is the second mass layoff in less than 2 months. Microsoft has recorded multi-billion-dollar quarterly profits, but the company says it's in the middle of an $80 billion investment in artificial intelligence. Ahead, there's something in the water. Could this anomaly unlock the mystery of what happened to Amelia Hehart? Her disappearance 80 years ago today remains one of the world's enduring mysteries. Now there is a renewed effort to try to find Amelia Earhart's plane. The intrepid American pilot and her navigator vanished over the South Pacific while she was attempting to become the first woman to fly around the world. Heidi Petracek reveals what evidence the latest expedition to find her hinges on.
On June 1st, 1937, Amelia Earhart prepared to take off on her last flight.
It was a record attempt gone wrong. A month after leaving in her Lockheed Electra, famed aviator Amelia Earhart and her navigator Fred Noonan vanished. Their unsolved disappearance leading to yet another expedition now to find them.
Purdue Research Foundation thought it was worthwhile to do.
Earhart worked at Indiana's Purdue University, so now it's probing a popular theory that the pair weren't killed in an ocean crash, but were marooned and died on a remote island in the Central Pacific. A theory partly based on these grainy satellite images.
The expedition is going to Nikomororo Island to identify whether an object in the lagoon is the lost 10E Electra.
The satellite imagery so clearly shows a tree.
Rick Gillespie has spent the past 30 years testing the same theory. His own trips to the island found artifacts, but no plane. He says his work has led him to one conclusion.
Earhart and Noonan landed and died on Nikomororo. The plane was destroyed in the surf. There's nothing left of the plane.
Those captivated by the story hope that plane can be found.
It's as if she's from Harbor Race.
Earhart launched her successful solo transatlantic flight from the small Newfoundland community of Harbor Grace back in 1932. Her bronze statue was a prominent attraction there before thieves made it disappear earlier this year.
We got our fingers crossed that they find this wreckage to prove what happened to our very own Amelia Earhart.
Purdue hopes its expedition will finally provide that final answer the world is looking for when it heads out in November. Heidi Petracek, Global News, Halifax.
Candid about cancer. Next, what the Princess of Wales has said about her own recovery. The Princess of Wales has delivered a deeply personal message about something tens of thousands of Canadians endure, recovering from cancer treatment. Kate Middleton visited a well-being garden at a British hospital today, planting a rose to celebrate the healing power of nature, and she spoke with patients in the cancer ward about her experience.
You put on sort of brave face, stoicism through treatment. Treatment's done.
Yeah.
So I can crack on and get back to normal again, but actually that the phase afterwards is really, is a really difficult one. You're not necessarily in a clinical team any longer, but you're not able to function normally at home as you perhaps once used to.
Kate was diagnosed with an undisclosed form of cancer in early 2024. She underwent surgery and chemotherapy. In January, she announced she's in remission and says patients need to take time to find their new normal.
I'm actually someone to help talk you through that, show you and guide you through that sort of phase that comes after treatment. I think is really valuable.
There was concern when the princess pulled out of an appearance at a horse racing event 2 weeks ago. She says she is still finding the right balance in her cancer recovery. That is Global National for this Wednesday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Your Canada is a Canadian legend. Singer-songwriter Joni Mitchell has received another accolade.
I do remember Canada, oh Canada.
Mitchell, who was born in Alberta and raised in Saskatchewan, has received the Royal Canadian Geographical Society's Gold Medal for her cultural contributions, including promoting Canada to the rest of the world. She received it at a small ceremony near her home on BC's Sunshine Coast. The Society's CEO says Mitchell's music has painted emotional landscapes for generations, and her words speak to the soul of Canada. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow.
Oh, I would still be on my